Hey guys, what's up? Echo here. A few months back, I released a complete setup tutorial for 3x3s, and since then, I have learned a lot and gained a lot of experience with my custom cubes, and I feel I can go a lot more in depth and provide new insight on everything mentioned in that video, so that's what we're doing in this video. I'll be going over all the most popular lubes and the effect that they have on the cube and how they should be used together, my tips for lubing, and how to tension your puzzle. By the end of this tutorial, you should have the knowledge necessary to set up your own 3x3. So, to follow along with this tutorial, you'll need to grab your 3x3 cube, a Phillips head screwdriver, a cloth or rag, a small container to hold some hardware, and some lube. Before getting to the steps themselves, I'm going to quickly go over the most popular lubes and hopefully help you pick up your first set of lube if you're newer to cubing or setting up cubes by yourself. So, linked in the description is a spreadsheet with all of the lubes I will be mentioning, with a description of the item and where you can buy it if that's helpful. So if you already have some lube, you can go ahead and skip to the timestamp on the screen, otherwise let's get started. So starting out with the weighted silicone lubes, let's quickly go over how the number scheme works. It's pretty simple. The number is based on the viscosity or thickness of the lube, with weight 1 being the thinnest, most watery lube, and weight 8 being the thickest on the cubing market. I feel the top silicone lube options are weight 3 and 5. Weight 3 is a very balanced lube, and if used properly, it gives the cube a very smooth yet quick feel. It is best to use on the pieces and will last a relatively long time. Weight 5 is a thicker lube, and while it's perfect to use on the pieces like weight 3, it can also be used to lube the core. This is due to its high viscosity and the fact that it lasts a very, very long time. If I had to recommend one lube out of these two, it'd definitely be weight 5 for its fantastic versatility. As a side note, you can use Traxxas 30K or 50K lube to get a very similar effect to weight 5. These lubes are silicone lubes and were originally made for RC cars, but they work fantastically for cubes as well. As another big plus, you can get a massive bottle on Amazon for around $8, which will likely last you for a couple years. This is the best budget option out there, as one bottle will last you at least 10 times longer than a 5 to 10 cc syringe of silicone lube. Also, if I had to recommend one single lube out of every one that I'm mentioning in this video, it'd have to be Traxxas. The bang for the buck is unmatched and it performs exceptionally. Moving on to some bottled lubes, there are a few lineups you'll want to consider. Speedcube Shop has the excellent Cosmic line of lubricants, which is my preference, but the Cubicle has some great options as well. These lubes are all great because you only need to put 2 to 3 drops in your cube, and the feel and speed can be altered dramatically. In my experience, mixing these particular lubes from SES and Cubicle doesn't generally work well, so I would just pick lubes from one store. So, there are 4 standard lubes in the Cosmic lineup. I'll go through each briefly now. Martian is a lighter lube, which like the other lubes in this list is only used for the pieces. Using this lube will maintain your cube's current speed and add a buttery smooth feel, which is just fantastic. It's similar to the effect of Lubical Silk if you tried that before, but in my opinion works just slightly better. This is one of my top picks for all bottled lubes. Lunar is the fastest lube out of the Cosmic line. It can be used to speed up any cube very easily, and gives the puzzle a plush and smooth feel. I love this lube and use it in just about every cube I own, including big cubes. Galaxy is the lube in the middle of the Cosmic spectrum, giving the cube a slightly gummy but fast and balanced feel. I don't have much experience with this lube because I don't own it, but it is fairly popular and could be a good choice if you want something controllable. Nebula is the thickest and gummiest lube out of all the bottled lubes to my knowledge. If you already know you like gummy cubes, this is the lube for you. It gives the cube an ultra smooth feel similar to Traxxas or weight 5 without losing too much speed. It works great with any other lube in the Cosmic line. Alright, moving on to Cubicle lubes, let's start with Lubical Silk. Silk is a great balanced lube. It makes the cube a bit faster and makes any clicks or bumps more subtle, like Martian from SES. This lube has been immensely popular for the 2 years since its release, and is easily one of the best lubes from Cubicle. Lubical Speedy is another bottled option that I personally don't have any experience with, but from what I've heard, this lube is good for speeding up cubes very quickly and giving them a runny and fast feel, without affecting the smoothness. However, I wouldn't recommend getting this lube in particular because the next one on the list is very similar, much newer, and more popular. D&M 37 from Cubicle Labs is one of the best bottled lubes on the market. It is a no compromises lube that simply adds raw speed to any cube instantly. It's excellent for big cubes and lasts much longer than other water-based lubes on the market. This is an excellent lube to complement a heavier lube like Traxxas. Next, Angstrom Research from the Cubicle has 2 bottled lubes on the market, Compound 5 and Compound 10. Compound 5 is a lube similar to D&M and does pretty much the exact same thing. It also happens to smell like peppermint, so that's pretty cool. In my experience, it's just less fast, and I may have received an awkward batch or something like that, so your mileage may vary. Compound 10, or Compound X, is the first water-based lube to work on controllability. It simply slows down your cube and gives it a nice and controllable speed without changing the feel at all, according to the Cubicle site and other reviewers. I haven't gotten the chance to try this lube yet, but people do seem to like it a lot, especially in conjunction with Compound 5. Before we get into how to lube your cube, let's just go over some of the miscellaneous lubes you might want to consider. So from what I've heard, Lubicle Black and SES Vortex do pretty much the exact same thing. They're meant to be used on the core of your cube and can drastically change the feel and speed. The only difference I can tell from the product pages is that Vortex is completely stain free, whereas Lubicle Black comes with a set of rubber gloves because it will stain skin and clothing, so keep that in mind. I haven't experienced any of these lubes, but I hear that the results are stunning. If you're just starting, don't worry about picking these up. Traxxas will do perfectly well for the core. The other Angstrom lubes, Gravitas and Dignitas, are apparently really good as well. From my understanding, Dignitas is designed to be fast and smooth, and Gravitas is meant to be controllable and smooth. I've heard they work wonders when used together and with one of the other compound lubes, but I don't have any experience with using them, so I won't be covering them in this tutorial. If you want me to try them out and make a video on them, let me know in the comments. Okay, so that covers just about every lube on the market. If I had to recommend just 2 lubes on this list, I'd say go with Lunar from SpeedCube Shop and Traxxas 50K on Amazon. These 2 lubes work great together and are great for a first set of cube lubes. Alright, grab your lube and let's start setting up your cube. I never really saw the point of lubing the core for the longest time. I didn't see it touching anything, so no reason to go through the trouble of disassembling the cube all the way to lube the springs, right? Well, no. The hardware is one of the most crucial parts of your cube, and lubing it will increase the life of your puzzle and reduce internal friction. The first step to setting up your 3x3 is going to be completely disassembling the cube. I know doing this step always seemed super time consuming and pointless for me as a beginner cuber, but it's really crucial to get the best setup possible. After taking it apart, you're going to want to wipe down all of the cubies with a damp cloth or rag. This will remove any residue from previous lubricants you've applied or that came from the factory. After that, put all the cubies aside and have a look at the core. Pull the centerpieces apart just to get a sense of what the tensions look like now. This might be useful for reference later. Use your screwdriver to unscrew all the centerpieces, separate them, and put them in your container. Use your cloth to wipe down the screws and washers, and be careful not to lose any of them. Now, let's lube the screws. You're going to want to use the heaviest lube you have for this, so it will hopefully last longer and you won't have to go through the trouble of lubing the core again. We don't want to use any water-based lubes on the core as they might rust and destroy your hardware. First, put a thick line of lube down the whole screw like this, and around the underside of the head. Then, put the spring on the screw. Next, put a little bit of lube on both sides of the washer and put it on the end of the screw. Now you can put this completed set of hardware inside of a centerpiece for safekeeping. Repeat this for the remaining centers. Now we're going to screw in the centerpieces of the cube to the core. Just roughly use the same number of wrist turns per centerpiece. It will help you later when fine-tuning the tensions, but you don't have to get them perfectly even just yet. If you have a stickless cube, make sure you screw in the centers in the right color scheme. This is very important for the final assembly. Once you have all of your centers all screwed in and lubed, we can move on to lubing the pieces. Beyond this point of the tutorial, I won't be giving you specific instructions on how to lube the rest of your cube, because everyone has a different set of lube, and in the end, the most exciting and difficult part of setting up your cubes is finding your style. So there's no correct way to lube the pieces, and as you set up more cubes, you'll figure out some methods that work well for you, but I'll give you some of my best tips to help you find a great setup. I generally start off with a silicone-based lubricant such as Weight 3 or Traxxas 50K on some of the tracks of the cube and around the centers to give the cube a nice smooth base. I strongly recommend starting with small amounts of lube and slowly adding more, because adding lube is much easier and better for fine-tuning than having to start over and clean out your cube from the start. After this base, you'll want to finish reassembling your cube and start breaking in the lube. Your cube might feel pretty stiff or super loose, your cube might feel very stiff or super loose, but try to spread the lube around the cube so that most sides feel lubed with about the same amount. Once you're done with that, let's work on tensioning. Then we can come back to the lube afterwards. Tensioning is one of the most intimidating parts of setting up any cube. Finding even tensions is daunting, and this step will take time. So start by turning each side individually and finding one that feels like a good speed. Let's call this your template side. Next, remove the center caps from every side except for the template side. Turn the template side a couple times and then another side that you're going to tension. If the side to be tensioned is faster or looser than the template side, tighten the tensions on that side by a quarter screw turn. If it feels too tight or slower than the template side, loosen that screw by a quarter turn. Continue with this process until the template side matches every other side on the cube. You should have mostly even tensions at this point, but remember that you can always adjust sides later on. This next step is super important to finding the right tensions for you. You'll want to test out corner cutting and spam some TPS. If the cube is unstable or pops, tighten every side by 90 degrees, and continue the experimentation process. If the cube is too tight still or can't cut 45 degrees, loosen the tensions by 90 degrees, etc. You'll need to repeat this process quite a few times in order to find the right tensions, but when you get the tensions to a good enough spot, you'll just know they feel right. After all of this work, you should break in your cubes with a few solves. Now, let's finish the lubing process. If your cube feels slow, use a light bottle lube if you have it, or a little bit of light silicone lube to speed it up. You can also just break it in more. If your cube feels too fast, add some heavier lube or just more lube in general to slow it down. The key for this step is using small amounts, because adding more lube is much easier than wiping it out. At this point, you should have a great start for a newly set up cube. Remember that setting up a cube is an ongoing process, and as you break the cube in, you'll have to make changes and tweak tensions, helping you master the art of perfecting a speed cube. Hopefully this video helped you guys out. I spent a really long time on the script, filming, and editing it. If you learned something from this video, share it with a friend you think it will help. If you have any specific lube or setup questions, be sure to leave them in the comments. I respond to every single one. In the description, you can find a link to a spreadsheet with all the lubes and descriptions, along with a link to purchase them from their respective stores. Thank you all so much for watching, and I'll see you guys later.